Welcome to the Switching Gear podcast that tells the story of 4 apparel brands on their journey to launch rental and resale business models.
Cheap, fast, disposable. The fashion industry is the perfect poster child for a linear economy, churning out a staggering 100 billion new items a year, which are used for an increasingly short amount of time before reaching their inevitable final destination in landfill or incineration. But it's also one of the most lucrative, creative, and consumer-facing industries on Earth. A $1 trillion industry that is built on the concept of change and that has long captured the hearts and wallets of the masses. If ever there was an industry to fundamentally reinvent itself, could it be fashion? The fashion industry's sustainability efforts thus far have been dominated by a focus on sustainable materials. And while this is a very important driver for impact reduction, with a growing population that is consuming at hyperspeed, it's becoming blatantly clear that a shift towards using sustainable materials alone is not going to cut it. Join me, Hélène Smits,
And me, Gwen Cunningham,
as we follow these brave brands as they shift from a linear to a circular business model, and as they grapple with questions like, how do I get buy-in from management and peers? How do I build a business model that aligns with our impact goals and financial targets? How can I design a business model that suits my brand's identity, market, and product? How can I find the right partners? Where do I start? This is their story. First up, August, Jacob, and Estelle, the Asket team, an independent Swedish menswear brand with a mission to slow down the fashion industry through honest production, transparent pricing, and revolutionary sizing.
Our whole mission is about decreasing consumption.
The second is the Lindex team, Annette, Charlotte, Therese, and Ida. Lindex are an established Scandinavian fashion chain and a Swedish family favourite, with approximately 480 stores in 18 markets.
One thing that was key in pushing this forward was that we started seeing it as a business opportunity.
And then we have the Kuyichi team, Zoe and Dominique. Kuyichi are the first ever organic denim brand based in the Netherlands with a simple stance, timeless essentials fairly made to last.
What you can see also now in the industry is that rental and resale is becoming more a topic.
And last but not least, the ETP team, Nancy, Esther, and Anna, the queens of Dutch corporate wear, delivering uniforms to esteemed clients such as Carré, the Waldorf Astoria, and ABN AMRO.
I do think that the analysis of the financial implications of moving towards a circular business model is really one of the most important things for ETP.
All 4 brands participated in the Switching Gear project, a 2-year project supported by the Loudest Foundation, which ran from 2019 to 2021, and aimed to accelerate circular business models in the apparel industry. The project guided our 4 brands on a circular innovation process to help them design and launch rental and resale pilots in 2021. Today's episode charts the very beginning of their journey, the startup phase. And let's be honest, this is a make or break moment for many, when nothing has started but everything can still be lost, when you need to convince others that this is a worthwhile pursuit, free up the resources to make it happen, and put all noses in the same direction.
Increasing the utilization of our garments is considered one of the most effective ways to reduce the overall impact of the clothing industry. A widely reported stat by WRAP indicates that extending the life of clothes by an extra 9 months of active use would reduce the carbon, water, and waste footprints by around 20 to 30% each. Resale, rental, and subscription models promise to do just this: optimize the lifetime and active use of garments and provide pathways to decouple growth from resource use. The urgency to tackle overproduction and underutilization is very clear and has become increasingly recognized by the industry. But is this urgency truly felt by individual brands? And what do they feel is their responsibility in tackling this problem?
For some brands, the urgency is an undeniable driver because it is ingrained in their DNA and in their mission, like with Asket, who see resale as a natural extension of their existing business model. that is already centered around this idea of the pursuit of less?
For us, the whole brand or our whole mission is about decreasing consumption and doing that by maximizing the usage of garments, making sure that what people buy they actually use for a long time and take care of. So it's a very natural step if we also then think that our responsibility for providing that or helping the customer with that doesn't just stop as soon as we've sold the garment, that we can actually move on to the use phase and the end of life phase. So in the beginning, maybe we didn't have a lot of urgency for this because, we started 5 years ago, and it wasn't until recently that we actually had garments that were around that age and when it becomes relevant to start taking back garments. But it's something that we've always had in the back of our mind and something that we wanted to add to the concept itself.
And while this urgency is increasingly felt in the industry, the reasons for brands to engage in circular business models like resale and rental are multifold. For Lindex, who already had established a form of take-back and reuse with partners since 2014, joining the project was about taking their commitment to the next level. Their thinking was that if they as Lindex truly want rental or resale to be the way garments are traded going forward, then they should make it part of their own commercial offer and make it financially viable. In that sense, the business opportunity and rationale became more important to Lindex.
We have been talking about it for quite some time, and I think that everyone has sensed that, okay, this is something that we have to start investigating, something that we have to start doing. But I think one thing that was key in pushing this forward was that we started to seeing it as a business opportunity. It's not just another campaign, it's like a real business opportunity. At that same time, this proposition came from you, from Circular Economy, and we kind of got it all packaged. I think also post-COVID that this has even further accelerated. There was a report released just recently, Fashion on Climate, from McKinsey, and if you read that report, it is clearly stated that in 10 years from now, 1 out of 5 garments has to be traded through circular business models. So I think this kind of gets it into perspective what is about to happen in the next 10 years. And it also sends a clear case for both the risk and the opportunity of not pursuing this way.
Meanwhile, for Kuyichi, stepping into resale is simply a logical next step. It makes sense for them as a sustainable brand, and now is the right time. They see that resale is happening anyway. It's a trend, and they're well positioned as a denim brand to tap into that.
Recent years, actually, Kuyichi made a restart in 2016, and we have looked at our brands with a new perspective from then. And what you can see also now in the industry is that rental and resale is becoming more a topic. So people are also buying more secondhand, vintage. It's really a part of the fashion industry that we cannot deny that it's there. And also Kuyichi jeans and all other items, we can see that they get resold on resale platforms. So people also see the value already of our clothing, which we really like. But we also want to bring in the customer that's not yet there to go to these second-hand kind of platforms. For Kuyichi, it's a kind of new thing that we think about, but we think about it already for some years now, but it's not something that we acted upon yet. And I think Switching Gear was really the drive to really dive into this subject.
So looking at these 4 brands, but also many others that have recently made strides in resale and or rental, the 3 most common reasons to engage include environmental urgency, commercial potential, and maintaining relevance as a brand. Resale and rental is happening whether brands are taking a piece of the pie or not, and it's a reflection of shifting consumer attitudes. Any brand that wants to be future-proof and stay relevant needs to explore what their customers expect and need with regards to rental and resale, and figure out how their business model should evolve to meet those needs.
So understanding that it's needed is one thing, but doing something about it is another thing entirely. How can you move intent to action and establish the mandate that is essentially needed to launch such a project?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very important aspect. How do you get buy-in from the top to start an intensive innovation project such as this? And I feel that the importance and the difficulty of this step is often underestimated. Of course, for some brands, this is easier than others, which we will see also with our brands. When we are kicking off a project such as switching gear, we usually approach the sustainability departments. They are acutely aware of the need for change, and so they are great allies to us in launching these initiatives. But too often we see that these sustainability champions are siloed in the broader team and unable to translate this urgency to management or to the organization at large.
Yeah, true. And, this is also in part what our toolbox, which we're launching in April 2021, tries to address, right? It's aiming to provide champions within organizations with this step-by-step guide on how to design and launch a circular business model and give them tools on exactly topics like this. How do you get buy-in and sign off from management? But okay, our core brands didn't have the toolbox when they started their journey. So how did they push it through?
Yeah, well, we have a small team, so it was more like a strategic fix. It's important to have the different parts of the company hooked because circular business models have an impact on the whole company. So for me, it was, okay, I have to pick somebody from every department a little bit. And yeah, to get them hooked, it was really all of the people at Kuyichi feel that we need to change towards something better. And yeah, with my enthusiasm, I am pretty convincing, I think. So that was, I think, the biggest part. I can ramble when I get enthusiastic. So
A little enthusiasm goes a long way,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
So even with a purpose-driven company like Kuyichi, which we just saw, Zoe, who is a sustainability champion, always scoping the next challenge, always trying to rally the team around her to support her. And her passion is infectious, which helps. But for smaller sustainability-driven brands, recognizing the urgency is actually not the main issue. The main challenge is how do you free up the resources and the time that is needed to follow through. They can have all the passion and purpose in the world, but they may not have the bandwidth or the financial means at hand to take on new work. So Zoe got buy-in by emphasizing how rental and resale was intrinsically linked to the brand DNA and therefore a logical next step. And by showcasing other brands whom they admire who are already doing it. For Asket, it was also not a question of why they should do it, but how they should do it.
As far as possible, having decision-making power in the team is crucial. Of course, the bigger the company, or the bigger your company, the harder that gets. But that allows the team to move forward very quickly and get the backing and support that is needed for this not just to be hypothetical developments, but become actual developments.
The bigger, more established brands that don't really have this heritage rooted in sustainability, this might work differently. For these brands, more of a business rationale is needed to convince senior management. For Lindex, for example, who is the biggest brand participating, this really was the strategy that they followed, focusing on the business opportunity, but also really the business risk of not doing anything.
Is absolutely one of the most important ways and maybe the fastest way to make a difference. I think the environmental urgency in doing this, that is clear. But what we are also seeing is, of course, the consumer shift that is now happening and that people are demanding these new business models. So this is also states a very clear opportunity as a business. And I would say that if you want to stay competitive as a company, this is not really an option anymore. But it's actually absolutely a to-do. So of course, I had 10 minutes in that pitch to management board. So I had 10 minutes to sell this project. But I think I focused on two things. And one thing was the risk of not joining when this is the only way forward. for the industry, and the other was to understand the opportunity in this growing market. So trying to be clear about that, the risk and the opportunity.
What Lindex is saying here was recognized by all the brands. It really helps to have a clear project and a structure to follow, and to understand clearly how you will move from A to B with the support of a partner, as was the case in this project with Circular Economy. It really reduces the risk of moving forward because it sets a clear expectation of the resources and the time that you will need to achieve a certain result.
Yeah, that's a great general tip, actually. And I wonder, what else can we learn from the success of our brands in getting sign-off, Hélène?
Well, it's really valuable to find and tap into the sustainability champions within your organization, who are your natural allies. But I'm afraid that's not enough. You also need to get broad support, since circular business models can't really succeed on one person's shoulders alone.
And the other thing I take away is kind of to know your audience when pitching. What drives the decision maker? As we heard earlier, the reasons to engage in a circular business model are multifold. So what benefit do you focus on? The commercial opportunity, the projected market movement, the huge impact potential, or maybe this question of relevance, which Hélène spoke about earlier. So how can you essentially tailor the story you're telling to the ears of those who, at the end of the day, you want approval from? So you've gotten the go-ahead and you need to put a task team together. There is a lot of talk about how companies need to do X, need to do Y, and a lot of scrutiny on why certain companies find it easy or difficult to innovate. But if you lift the lid, you see that it's people within the company. They are the ones, their knowledge, passion, motivation, willingness to collaborate, or creative prowess, or lack thereof, that is what is really at the foot of the pedal that's driving change, in my opinion. So putting together the right team is crucial.
But what, in the context of designing and launching a circular business model pilot, constitutes right? I mean, what do you really need, and when do you really need them? What skills, knowledge, or attitudes should be at the table, and when?
First of all, the basics, maybe. Hélène, is a team needed? And if so, how big?
Yeah, of course, a team is needed. I mean, you are building a new business model. But the question is, should it be big or small? What we find is that it doesn't really matter. There's not really something that's set in stone. It should be proportionate to the size of the company, which is really what we saw with our brands.
Since we are a very small team overall at Asket, we're just 13 people. So basically, we've staffed 1/4 of the entire workforce in this project.
Our sponsor, he's our new strategy and business director, but has a long history from being a marketing director. So he's really strong in marketing. And then we have, of course, Annette, that is the strategic lead for circularity and sustainability. So she's the key person, I would say, that has all the knowledge or most knowledge within this area. It's me as a project manager, but I've been in the fashion business for 20 years, working both with production and purchasing. And then we have IT development in the core team and a customer engagement manager as well. So really having the customer, the IT side, knowing about the product, and then knowing about sustainability. So that's how we set together the core team. And in the extended team, it's actually it's a mix of both managers and specialists, but it's within sales development, business controlling, design and purchasing, and even now we have store design, because we're also looking into store design as well in the team. So it's a mix of skill sets and knowledge in the team today.
Another key aspect is decision-making power, which should be in the team or close at hand at the very least. The CEO or the manager needs to be kept in the loop on what's taking shape and have given permission to the team to make decisions within a certain agreed upon scope. So for Kuyichi, this meant, the close involvement of Peter, the founder and the owner of the company. For Lindex, it meant having a sponsor.
For us, it was also important that besides the team that is really working on this, our CEO, Peter, he also is involved. So he keeps up to date about everything, and he's the one that actually says, okay, but this is the way we should go. So he's not actively involved, but he's the one that needs to make the decisions. I think it's needed that you have somebody from the highest level in the company. Our company is pretty flat, but still he's the one making the final decisions. So it's good to have somebody like that on board, and also really needed.
But innovation can also require agile, on-the-spot decision-making. And so having the founders in the room can move you further faster. And this is what we saw Asket really had to their advantage.
And of course, it helps then that, with me and August in the team, we have a lot of decision making that we can do directly. And since in that stage of it, it has a lot to do with what do we believe this should be, what's right for the brand. And there we kind of share that responsibility. So I think it has made it probably faster and easier to be just three to get to a concept. Whereas if you're more people, I imagine we could have gone in a multitude of extra directions.
As far as possible, having decision-making power in the team is crucial. Of course, the bigger the company, or the bigger your company, the harder that gets. But that allows the team to move forward very quickly and get the backing and support that is needed for this not just to be hypothetical developments.
And what about the actual team profile? What functions from within the company should be involved? Since circular business models touch on multiple elements of the business, from product design to waste management, you are going to need a cross-departmental team. And that's also proven to be key here. Of course, bearing in mind that the skills needed will shift over the course of the innovation process. At different phases of the journey, you will need maybe certain practical expertise, but also maybe a certain energy or outlook to keep things moving.
I think for a larger company then, maybe my advice would be to bring in one person from each major department. So that, once you have all the perspectives, because it ties into so many parts of the business. And then it's also, I assume, going to be a lot easier to sort of anchor it within the organization if you have everyone represented from the beginning.
We also see that's actually, if I should be talking about what we see, is at the different stages of the project, we also see that we need different skills. So you need a mix of super visionaries and creatives and innovative people, but you also need them people that has a really strong knowledge of the business that we have today to make it happen. And then also you need action-oriented doers. So there's a mix that you need in the project team. That we're also reviewing constantly and have a big discussion about who should we bring aboard to really make it happen. So that has also shifted.
So having a decision maker in-house or at hand, building a cross-departmental team that represents those who can speak to relevant aspects of the model, from sustainability to marketing, customer insights, product design, finance. But critically and interestingly, something that all of our brands emphasized again and again and again was the importance of onboarding those who have a personal passion, interest, motivation for the topic at hand.
I think it's important to have people in your team that really want this. So that feel that this is an important step to take for the company. That it's not an easy subject. It's something you're still pioneering at. So there's not a path laid out for you. So you have to be intrinsically motivated to work on this. So yeah, I think that is a really important advice that I could give other people. Really find the people that are really wanting to do this. Yeah.
It's a passion project, right? You really want people aboard that is truly committed to this, and that's the drivers of each person. That comes clear after a while. Why are we in this business development? And when Annette and I have this discussion, I think that's something that's also key for this type of project. So really, why are we here, and what do we want to achieve? But true interest for circularity and sustainability, I think that is key, actually.
So once you've formed the project team, another very important step, again, a good start of such an innovative project, is to align the team on shared goals. And if we look at the highest level, we actually see quite some alignment in the goals across the brands. But when we dig deeper, the brand goals and the priorities can vary quite a bit, actually, because they are tailored to that specific brand's target customer, product, market, price point, internal capabilities, and so on. So while models seem similar from afar, they are definitely not a one-size-fits-all. It's therefore essential that you set goals and prioritize them to guide the process of designing and operationalizing your model. Many decisions need to be made along the way, and a concrete set of goals will make it much easier to align the team and final decision makers in this process. And it makes sense to set these goals early in the process, but what timing is actually best?
Well, I think the exact timing is actually a bit flexible because, for some brands, it might be clear from the start what their goals are, like Kuyichi, for instance.
Yeah, I think we set some goals. First of all, what was really the core is that we as Kuyichi want to take our product responsibility, end of life responsibility. So we want to be responsible for where our products end up. And that was really the core from, okay, that's what we want to achieve. But how are we going to do that? So I think that was the clearest goal that we set. Besides that, it was also for us, we also really wanted to target a different consumer. So we were already targeting this consumer in other ways, but we wanted to focus with this project also on that kind of consumer. So I think those were the two main goals that we already set ourselves.
While others might first want to have a basic understanding of what the different business model options are, and from there get an idea of what kind of model or approach would fit their brand and product, so that they can then set more clear and concrete goals. And this was the case for Asket.
We knew we wanted to do something in the circularity area. Here was a program. Let's join. So at that point, we didn't know exactly what we wanted to get out of it other than getting started. I think it was first when we had maybe, a bit of a better understanding of the whole idea of circularity after our first introductory workshop, when we knew, what's the scope and what are the different models we're talking about. And when we got into starting initial plans around, what are we going to do with this? Then we quite quickly moved into, we have to have certain set of goals to be able to actually evaluate what direction will make sense for us.
So the timing of it is not set in stone. But what about the kind of goals to set? What are the key considerations that brands should have?
Well, ideally, a new resale or rental model will be optimally designed to meet 3 key criteria for success. That it has a value proposition that's convenient and affordable for the customer, that it has a positive business case that can compete with and in time even cannibalize the brand's primary business model, and last but not least, that it has a net positive impact on people and planet. I mean, scaling a commercially successful model that cannot clearly demonstrate a positive impact really defeats the purpose. And at the same time, designing a model with a positive business case and impact that doesn't really appeal to the customer also doesn't make any sense. And so your model really needs to tick all the boxes to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I suppose when you start this journey and you're trying to answer that question, what does a successful rental or resale model look like for us? It is useful to not only look at the short and long-term commercial potential for the company, but also look through the lens of your customer and the environmental and the social impact associated with the model.
Exactly. And the balance should be there. However, what we've seen with our brands is that they have actually one core overarching goal that really defines what is most important to them. And then they kind of build that out with other goals. Similar to Kuyichi, the core goal of Asket is really related to impact, maximizing the usage of their garments. And they took it from there to attach also other goals to this, which focus on the customer and the company value.
So our key goals, we have quite a list, but I would say the most important one, and that we've already been talking about, is, of course, maximizing the usage of all Asket garments out there. That's the primary reason, and it ties in very well to our overall goal of ending the era of fast consumption and the pursuit of less. But on underneath that, there are a lot of other things we of course want to achieve. So one of them is, I would say, strengthening the brand or making our concept more holistic, tying it all together, sort of. Then it's also strengthening our customer relationships, so that we're on a journey for a longer time, that we actually are involved at the end of the use phase of their garments as well, which also means that we're top of mind when eventually, hopefully after a long period of time, they do need to replace something. And then what we've kind of realized during it is also there's a goal of actually gaining access to more data and being able to funnel that into our regular business and improving products and longevity that way. And then, of course, we have to have some sort of economic goal, but that one has basically been that we want this to break even or be, operationally self-sufficient, sort of. So we don't envision this, that we don't have any aggressive revenue or profit targets here. As long as we can make it work, that's what we're fine with for the long term.
For other brands, the commercial potential weighs heavier and represents the core goal. While Lindex has a clear goal for the model to contribute to their sustainability promise and help increase product longevity, their main requirement is that the model will have a resilient business case and will allow them to take market share of the rapidly growing resale market.
The goal from the beginning was, of course, to make this profitable new business model. And I think the goal is still the same. And of course, we saw a lot of advantages depending on where we came from, like consumer engagement. There were a lot of benefits that we could see. But the goal was still the same, to try to make this as an opportunity.
For ETP, the key is really to balance impact and profit for themselves as well as for their customer.
Well, actually, we want to convince the customer also that they can gain as well money to keep all the textile more long in the cycle, let's say it this way, and also gain a lot of impact. That it's always two different things. It's the impact on the nature as well as the financial impact, and that should be in balance.
But I think also a very important insight that we gathered through the project was, I think our main thought was, okay, our customers think it's very important and we have to keep our customers. So whenever we can find a model that is cost neutral, then we will be happy. So also cost neutral for ETP. I think that was in the beginning, our thoughts. And then at one point we were working on it and we realized this is not the way it should be. We also should gain some profit from the whole new model. And I think that was also an important insight, and we started working on that. And now we can already see that is definitely possible.
So what we learned from this is that it's not only important to set a balanced set of goals, but also to prioritize them in order to really be of practical use in helping you to guide decision making. Another tip is to limit the amount of high priority goals that you set, otherwise the goals lose their power and you as a brand lose focus. Finally, you might find that as you progress, test and learn, and your model is taking shape, priorities might shift a bit, and that's okay. Most probably the core goal would not change, but other goals might become more or less important, or new goals might appear. I mean, it's still an innovation process, and so staying flexible and agile will be key to your success. This concludes episode 1 of the Switching Gear podcast. We hope you were able to take away some insights that can help you to get started on your own journey towards the design and launch of a new resale or rental model. In the next episode, we will be reflecting on a very essential step in the process: understanding your market and, most of all, understanding your customer. up to 80% of new consumer product launches fail. How do we avoid this? A good understanding of your target customer needs is a good place to start. Many brands have an idea of who their customer is, but do they really know what drives or puts off their customer, especially in the context of a new thing like a resale or rental model? A big mistake is to design your business model in a bubble, based on assumptions of what you think you know. Rather, you should dive into the hearts and minds of your customers and attempt to understand their biggest motivations and what keeps them up at night. Keep your ears peaked for episode 2, where we will hear from our brands as they share with us their learnings and challenges in tackling this essential discovery phase.
The Switching Gear podcast was made possible thanks to the generous support of the Loudest Foundation. The podcast is part of the Circular Toolbox for apparel brands. If you are interested in developing and launching a resale or rental model of your own, the Toolbox will guide you, step by step, through the same innovation process the brands in this podcast have gone through, including all the workshop materials you'll need and a wealth of tips and tricks to support you on your journey. Go to thecirculartoolbox.com to learn more.